Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where we talk about things that matter with people who matter. I I had to touch my screen to get it to come into focus. So welcome, everybody. Um, if you're watching on YouTube, there might be some things that I'll show today that you'll want to see, but if not, no problem. I will make sure I put anything in the show notes if you're only listening. I don't know. There could be things I need to draw. There could be things that come to me that I feel the need to do a little bit more than just talking about today. So I'm just going to let it emerge because that's the space I've been in lately, this emergent space, which is more about allowing things to happen than forcing them. And it's been really interesting because I've had conversations with potential clients in the last week that have come to me because of something I said in another presentation I did. And people are starting to be really curious about some of the things that I'm curious about. And that is encouraging to me because it means that I'm not the only one having these thoughts and looking for places to have conversations about them. So I'm reading, no surprise, I read a lot. And I'm reading a couple of books right now. One I've been studying for many years. It's called A Course of Love. And what I'm on right now, the part of the book I'm on right now, is really in alignment with some of the other things I've been talking about, studying, noticing, observing, and also the book Falling Upward, which is by Richard Rohr. And I'm reading that book in two different groups. And we're studying what it means to be in the first half of your life and the second half of your life. According to Richard Rohr, it's about awakening, I guess. He calls it falling upward, but recognizing that what you did and who you were being in the first half of your life got you to a certain place. And at some point, it will call to you maybe to shift the way you're being so that you can become what you were created to become. And I know it's important for us who are on any kind of a personal development, self-awareness journey to be what we choose to be at some point before we become it. Be before you become, which means think about it in your mind, have a vision for what you want yourself and your life to be so that you have a target or a destination to go toward. Be before you become. So today this might be something that I'm just allowing to come to me, and it might be a little bit convoluted. It might be a little bit all over the place today. And yet I woke up this morning and just started typing. And I just typed a long essay, just like a stream of consciousness essay. And I didn't do a podcast last week, so I felt like I needed to do it this week. So that's what this is going to become. Being to becoming. And so right now, it can feel like we are in kind of a messy middle. We don't know yet what the outcome will be. We can't go back to the way things were, and yet we don't know exactly how things are going to shake out. And so it can feel really messy in the middle of a transformation, but that's kind of the point. If we're getting rid of the old way of seeing things, the old way of being, or in the book that I referenced earlier, Falling Upward, the old first half of our lives, we have to be willing to give that up in order to open up to the possibilities that can pull us into the future. I don't have that book in front of me. I wish I did. But I remember reading yesterday in one of the groups, we were talking about being ego-driven or soul-drawn. And in the first half of our lives, we tend to be ego-driven. We're trying really hard to accomplish things and create things and make and force things to happen. And in the second half of our lives, we can take a breath and recognize that there's another way of being, which is less ego-driven and more soul-drawn. So in that space of in between, I'm telling you, it's messy. And there are people I know who want to go back to the way it was. And I work with a lot of coaching clients right now, organizations and individuals. And I know there are some people who just do not love this space. They are doing the work for themselves and on themselves, and the people around them don't seem to be doing the same kind of work. And that can be really frustrating, and it can be kind of lonely. So when you decide that there's a way of being that could be different than the way you've been being, you're kind of starting to wake up to things. And again, that's not comfortable. Kind of the point, you know? Growth doesn't happen in our comfort zones. So I'm just looking over here to share with you some of the notes I took this morning when I was writing my stream of consciousness essay. And in I'm thinking about I took dance lessons for 1 year as a freshman in high school because I was very uncoordinated. I grew really fast and I was uncoordinated. And my parents thought it would be good for me if I wanted to play basketball at some point to learn some coordination. So I took 1 year of dance lessons. And as I'm writing this morning, I'm remembering the dance lessons and the transformation it takes to learn the dance and then to be the dance. And so I thought about it like a dancer practicing for a performance. Movement, being, and expression come together when you are performing for the audience. When you're practicing, it's messy. And I watch Dancing with the Stars once in a while, and it's kind of like that, right? They don't know what they're doing at the beginning. They have a week to learn a new dance, and some of them have never danced before. So in the process of learning it, it's clunky, and it can be frustrating, and you fall, and you make mistakes, but they know the outcome is at the end of the week, they're going to be performing live. So there's this movement, being. Movement is all the stuff you have to figure out until at some point you be it, you embody it, you understand step over here, and all the mechanics of it come into your beingness, right? You're okay, I practiced it and now I get it. And then when it comes time to go to the stage or go to the performance, you express it. So it comes out. It comes out of you. So movement, being, and expression come together. And when you think about that, if we are conscious of that, if we're on purpose about that, then everything we're practicing and learning and doing before we have the chance to express it is so that we become better performers. And I don't mean performers as in I'm faking it. I mean expressors. Let's just say expressors. I become a better expresser of things because I've practiced so long behind the scenes. And so then when something happens in my real life, I have practiced it. I've it's been like I'm guessing it must be to be learning flying in a simulator. You learn in the simulator and you have the crashes and you have the things that happen to you so that if that happens in real life, you know what to do. And so all of this I've been thinking about. The work is done in preparation for the performance or for the knowingness. Let's put it that way. The work is done in preparation for the knowingness so that when circumstances call for you to express, you're confident in what you know. So the hope is that by the time of the performance, the work is completed. And then all that's left is the expression and the natural expression and the authentic expression. So I think also of seeds that you plant in the ground. I remember in third grade we planted bean seeds in a little paper cup. And then we'd wait to see, is it coming through? Is it coming through yet? Is it popping through? And it would be like, nothing's happening. But we're not going to go dig up the bean seed to make sure that the seed is sprouting. We're going to wait until the one day when it pushes through the dirt and then it grows. You can watch it, almost watch it grow. Kind of like bamboo, right? Bamboo takes forever under the ground, but once it comes out, it grows really fast. It's a regenerating. What is that called? That's why bamboo is so valuable because it regenerates itself. So then the thing I wrote here, if the preparation isn't taken on in the time before it's needed, it won't be useful because the work is the preparation for the time when the expression will be required. But if there's no need for the expression, then what's the point of the work? And so I'm kind of pondering this and I'm like, so So what? If I go to school and learn something and I never use it, then what's the point? Um, there are great opportunities to expand your thinking and doing that, but part of it is so that you can use what you've learned, you can use what you've practiced. And so I said here in what I wrote, we practice and have dress rehearsals and exhibition games so that we can show our work in low pressure simulations. Like when I played basketball and we'd have exhibition games or we'd have scrimmages, which didn't really count toward the outcome, but they gave us real life situations to practice in so that we could see before it counted toward our win loss in the schedule. What could we change? What could we learn from? What could we enhance? And unless we practice in these real life but low pressure simulations, we have a greater risk for mistakes when the stakes are high. And so practicing all these things, understanding things before we have to express them, I think is really good. And we want to have opportunities to express them. So I said here, how are we practicing and why? We naturally get better at the activities and drills we do over and over again. We naturally do. If we do the same thing over and over again, it would make sense that we'd get better at that. If we do those activities and drills consciously, awake, above the line, open, curious, committed to learning, we're doing them on purpose, then it would stand to reason that we will get what we desire. We're doing this for a purpose, for an outcome. If we do those activities and drills unconsciously, below the line, closed, defensive, committed to being right, we're doing this unconsciously, we still master those skills, but we have no awareness of or responsibility or accountability for our actions. We've simply allowed our need to be right to win over the possibility of learning and consciously applying those skills. So we still get better at what we do over and over again, and sometimes we get better at complaining and speaking bad of things and noticing what's wrong, and we're really good at doing that because we do it over and over again, and we're doing that unconsciously, below the line, closed, defensive, committed to being right. So I continued to write. So if you've never worked your critical thinking skills, it should come as no surprise that thinking for yourself is difficult, if not impossible. If you've always been told by someone else what to do, when left to your own devices, you're powerless. You have not exercised your choice muscles, so they've atrophied. You don't even know in which situations you would theoretically need to use those muscles because you've not even been aware of the state of possibility because you're so used to probability. Probability is the limit to which your awareness has led you. So if you do things the same way you've always done them, you'll probably get the same results. And then you kind of know what you can expect of your life. And if you don't like it, you can complain about it because nothing's going to change until we change the way we look at things, said Wayne Dyer. And then probably things are going to be pretty much the same. But just because you haven't seen the need for choice and discernment doesn't mean the possibility isn't there waiting for you. Be before you become. Just because you haven't exercised these muscles yet doesn't mean there isn't a place for you to express them. The truth doesn't cease being true just because you don't believe it. So I continue. The good news is that there are some who have set out on a path ahead of you. They're not right and making you wrong. They're just ahead on the same path. So then, right and wrong are simply conditions of the choices you make. Right gets you closer to what you say you want, and wrong takes you further from it. That's it. That's it. You've made a decision in your mind about the destination you want to get to, and the actions you take will either get you closer to that destination or further from. That's the only reason it would be right and wrong. And again, I'm going back to being conscious. If we're doing this consciously, we're aware, we're open, curious, committed to learning, then all of the learning we've been doing, all of the practicing, all of the setting ourselves up, building our muscles, is for a purpose so that we can use those muscles. And so conscious is consciousness is really important in this conversation. So the distinction is that in a conscious existence, you have a destination in mind. And I love this term, cottywomple. You might have heard me use it before. Cottywomple is to move purposefully toward a vague destination. So you can cottywomple your way in a vague destination. Even if you don't know the absolute outcome, you can move in the direction. And so when we do that, you cottywomple in the direction even if the final outcome is blurry. But in an unconscious existence, when you're below the line, you're closed, defensive, committed to being right, you wait to be told what to do before you venture out. In an unconscious existence, you only need to discover what is wrong, and you never have to be accountable or responsible for your own actions because you weren't the one to decide where to go or what to do. You always have someone else to blame for anything that turns out to be wrong. It's really fascinating to look at that. And I know there are people who are more hesitant to take risks. I totally understand that. It's the way they're wired. I'm not judging this, I'm just observing it. When we are not in the position to take responsibility for our own actions, of course we are going to blame someone else. How else would it be? It's all we know. So we're asking other people for the directions to a place we think we need to go or we want to go, and then we get mad at them if the directions don't work for us. Or maybe we don't even get mad, maybe we just blame. Maybe we don't, because we don't have to take accountability for something we didn't decide. And the thing about that is, if you're so used to pointing out for yourself and others what's wrong and what isn't working and what's bad and what needs to be fixed, well, isn't it it's no wonder then that that's what you get better at. I get better at looking at what's wrong because I've never given myself the opportunity to look at what's possible. I've only ever looked at what's wrong and needs to be fixed, and somebody else should do something about it, and blame and all these kinds of negative, when I say negative, I mean lower energy experiences show up. And then we think that's it. We think there are no other possibilities because we're just so used to being in a certain way of being. So the truth needs no defense and it doesn't demand anything. If you want to go it alone, deciding by not deciding and allowing your life to happen to you, then it's insane to be upset at what you've tolerated, right? I mean, I hate that because it kind of is a gut punch when you think about it. Why am I mad at what I've tolerated over time? Thanks for the hearts and fire, Melissa. I know you're in this conversation. I know you and I have had these kind of talks before. Conscious or not, you make your choices and then your choices make you. So consciously, you make your choices and the choices make you. And if you do that consciously, you're open, curious, committed to learning. It seems like a pretty good, I suppose. I don't even need to judge it, but it seems to be a good choice, right? But if you do that unconsciously, it's the same thing. You make your choices and then your choices make you, but the difference is you're doing it unconsciously, closed, defensive, and committed to being right. And all you know unconsciously is that someone's out to get you, and you have to fight to be right. You're not interested, I shouldn't even say that, you're not showing or exhibiting the behavior that would lead someone to believe that you are open to learning. It occurs as if everything's about protecting what you already know. And then you have to fight to be right about what you already know. But if, on the other hand, you would choose to take one step in a different direction, that one step, one little step, will point you toward a different outcome. And that's the step toward possibility. There's a possibility that something will be different from the way it has been. Even if it's small, it's still a possibility. That the probability will kick in once you start moving. So you can count on probability too if you let momentum carry you in the new direction. Because if you move in a new direction and you keep going, you'll probably get where you are headed now. So probability works in both ways, in the conscious way and in the unconscious way. The probability will kick in once you start moving in a different direction. You'll probably end up at your destination if you just keep walking. So the scariest part of any new journey is that first decision to change direction, even slightly. I get it. Change, it's funny. We want change when we want it, and then we want it to happen. We don't want to do anything about it, but we want, like, you need to change your mind. We need a new menu item in this restaurant. When we decide we want things to change, we want it to happen like that. But when it has to do with us and other people are asking us to change, we resist. We're so funny, curious humans we are. What's curious is how adamant some people are that their way is the only way. Making a declaration towards your own destination is one thing, but disparaging others who don't choose what you have chosen is very curious to me. What is the point in chastising those who choose a different path than you have? I don't understand this because I'm doing my best to stay conscious. So when I'm in consciousness, open, curious, committed to learning, I'm curious about other people's choices. Maybe you will attract those people who are in unconscious awareness and aren't yet able or willing to think for themselves. Maybe that's what you want when you're saying other people should believe things the way you do. Your goal might be to gather those others to support your decision to be their leader, but not to think for themselves, because they might challenge your decision about the direction in which to travel. And heaven forbid that would happen. So maybe it's people who are saying, come this way, march in this direction, and don't ask questions and don't be curious about that. Just follow me because I am your leader. Maybe that's an unconscious leader who will do everything in his or her power to stay right about that. And maybe that's who they're looking to attract. And again, I don't even know if this is a conscious decision, but this is an interesting thought. When you're not the lead dog, the view doesn't change. So when you are the lead dog, you see everything ahead of you. You're now responsible for the destination, and you don't want to entertain the possibility that there could be any other destination than the one you've chosen, so you have to make sure that all the followers see in front of them is you, the lead dog. They don't see anything to the sides. That's why they put blinders on, right? When we're having horses and dogs in races, you put blinders on. Kathy says, what if your new conscious pattern is not seeking, not banging on doors, not convincing? Instead, it's just being. That's the point of this conversation, Kathy. It's being and then becoming. So I would think maybe, Kathy, that when people are conscious, above the line, open, curious, committed to learning, there's not as much, maybe none, no convincing needed, right? There's no convincing needed. There's no seeking. There's no banging on doors. There's no convincing, because at that point, we just go. We just go in the direction of our own dreams. We don't do it for other people or to prove anything or to convince anyone. And that's the distinction, I think, between below the line and above the line consciousness. Let's see. Is that okay? Challenging you, the lead dog. Okay, I said there would be nothing positive to come from challenging or being challenged in this perspective, right? So the lead dog, follow me, don't ask questions, do what I say, my way or the highway. I mean, we've all heard of these ways of leading in corporate settings, but is that the only perspective to consider? I was thinking of this book called The Thin Book of Naming Elephants, which is about calling out things that you see need to be changed. And there's a story in there about a space shuttle that crashed. And somebody noticed that there was something wrong with the foam on the side of the shuttle, or something was wrong with something. And they tried to call it out, tried to say, hey, look at this. And their words weren't heard. And so I don't know the exact details of it, but I can imagine. I've been in those situations where you don't really want to be the tattletale or the one to call things out, yet you know there's something wrong, and that's a messy middle dilemma. I don't want to say anything in case I'm wrong, but if I don't say something, it could be catastrophic, and that's what happened here. Someone saw a warning, a potential problem, but didn't feel supported in sharing that concern, and the shuttle crashed. The culture didn't support conscious leadership, apparently, only the leadership from the lead dog. And I think that's probably true in a lot of situations where fear has become the way we do things around here. You know, um, the conversations that happen around the water cooler are the ones that really, the ground truths. You know, that's in Fierce Conversations, Susan Scott talks about the ground truth. That's what's really happening. And in the boardroom, when we nod our heads and agree with the lead dog, it's because we don't feel safe to ask another question. And I'm learning that certainty kills curiosity. So anytime you're completely certain about something, what's the point of being curious? What's the point of asking different questions? When enough people feel their voices aren't valued or heard, they either stop sharing those voices or they leave the situation. When when the most conscious voices leave the organization, those voices of awareness, consciousness, aliveness, curiosity, we're left with hierarchical, pyramid-shaped cultures, ones that represent the burial ground for aliveness around which they are shaped. There's a whole conversation about pyramids being burial grounds, that they're dead, and yet that's the shape of our hierarchical organizations. You know, we have the leaders at the top and the workers at the bottom. The only way, oh wait, whoops, is it any wonder we are where we are in a world where questions are stifled and loud voices win, and I put win in quotes, where what we get better at because we do it over and over without thinking is nodding our heads and being hypnotized by the voices telling us what to think and what to do. We become compliant. We become obedient because it's just easier in some cases than questioning and being that, I don't know, that, think of a negative um, adjective for those people who ask questions. You know, you're a rabble rouser. You're going against the flow here. So the only way for a game to stop is for one side to just stop playing the game. Once there's nothing to push against, there's nothing to resist. Yet, if there is no other loud voice alternative, like if all we hear is the loud voice and there's no loud voice alternative, people will fall to the lowest level of complacency and resignation. What's the point? What's the purpose? I try to talk and nobody listens. I guess I don't matter. I mean, all of these things are signs of resignation and compliance. How can we make better choices and practice our skill of discernment unless we know there are other options? And when we only hear one voice and it's the voice of the lead dog, well, how could we think any differently? We start to question our own sanity in some cases. The still small voice is never, ever silent. It's just not a voice that yells or shouts or demands. You have to lean in to hear it. You have to stop your own talking and parroting and repeating long enough to hear another alternative. And silence is scary to those who are used to being in chaos. Susan Scott in Fierce Conversations talks about letting silence do the heavy lifting. Yet that's really uncomfortable. But that's where the still small voice that is constant exists. And silence is scary, right? So since those listening and discerning muscles have seemed to atrophy, they don't know if they don't know if they can trust themselves without someone else there to follow. And it's this weird space we get in where the gap between the sides gets wider and wider. And I can see it. I can see it in our country. It's if we stop playing the game, if we stop listening only to the loudest voice, it's new, it's unknown, it's untested, it's scary. And it's also kind of exciting because it opens up possibilities that we have to think for ourselves. I'm thinking of Portland, and I'm thinking about how there's really nothing to fight against in Portland because the people in Portland made it kind of funny. I mean, people were like dressing in costumes, protesting, I guess, against the forces that were there to be the louder voices and tell them something. I'm not even quite sure what the louder voices were trying to tell them because there was really nothing to resist. And so it's kind of funny in a way that instead of fighting fire with fire or coming back and pushing against, you just make it funny. Wear a frog costume. I mean, what's there to fight? So it's scary, sure, but it's also exciting because if we can start thinking for ourselves, then we can test those dormant forces, faculties, and talents that are just waiting to come alive. They're dormant. They're not dead. They're just dormant. They're just waiting to be invited. The things that the still small voice could provide for us, better ways to listen, better ways to formulate our conversations, opportunities for dialogue, which is suspending previous assumptions in order to learn from each other, that's there. It's always been there. It's just been drowned out by the loudest voices of the lead dogs. So I just want to end this thought today by reminding myself, as well as all of us, that if we aren't living our own lives, there will always be someone to tell you how to live a version of theirs. Because the louder voices are always going to be there. The lead dogs will always be there. But unless we give an alternative to the lead dog loud voice and help people lean in and hone those listening and discernment skills, we're going to be destined to get what we probably have. And I'm not okay with that. Personally, I'm much more interested in possibilities than in probabilities. I already kind of know probabilities. I've seen them. It's probably going to be a lot like it has been. And I'm much more interested in something that isn't there yet. The possibility of coddywampling toward a destination, even if I'm not completely 100% sure of it. That's the being before becoming. If I can be someone who's open, curious, and committed to learning, then I can become one of the still small voices that are steady and leading with curiosity and staying open to possibilities. And that gives a different alternative than the lead dog loud voice, follow me, keep your mouth shut. And I'm much more interested in that. Let's not let certainty kill our curiosity. Let's keep talking, even if our voices are shaking, even if we're unsure. Let's just keep giving an alternative to those loud voices. If you want more of this, please consider at least visiting the Enlightened Leadership Lab on Mondays. We meet from 4 to 5 Central. And yesterday was such a great conversation. We allow the conversations to emerge. We have themes, but we don't have agendas. And so in the theme of things, everybody's invited to consider things, lean in, use our voices, and practice. That's what a lab is for. So, as always, go look for ways this week to just get real, radical, energized, authentic, and learning focused. Don't let the loud voices hijack the word radical from you either, because the word radical means to get back to the root, of you, not what other loud voices have made it mean. So let's get back to the root. Let's get real, and let's practice our still small voices together. Thanks, everybody. Take care.